Now this is possibly one of the funniest days we've ever had at the shop. What we tried to do today was pull some of the body parts off of Glenn's Ducati. Glenn is healed up enough that he came over for a work day. And as you can see on this is pretty well, it looks like somebody took a piece of sandpaper and sanded it all down. And so what I tried to do, I tried to get the garage ready while Glenn was on his way over here. I know he's had several, since the accident, several little health-related issues. Let's leave it at that. This side of the fairing, this part he had already ordered, and it was due to come in today, but we didn't have time to do it the way the day played out. But he did get some stuff done. Now some of the parts we're going to be able to fix over the winter. When one of the thoughts we had was over the winter we're going to turn this into a Tricolari bike with basically red, white, and green like Joe's helmet. This was one of the mirror stalks. Look, it still has some grass in there. And I had been storing a bike for the past couple of weeks while Glenn healed up. This part of the saddlebag looked like it took a real ass whipping here, so I think he got one off of eBay on that. I wanted to show up in the front here. This really, between the saddlebag and the plastic, actually no damage got done to the frame or the motor. But again, there were some funny things happened in the course of the day. And you never know how a day like this is going to play out. I just kind of did a little evaluation while I was waiting for Glenn to get here and make some coffee and stuff. And this looked pretty well worn through. Now to fix a part like this, yeah, it could be done. A lot of labor, a lot of bondo. But I wanted to wait till Glenn actually got there before I actually did anything. Now what's funny about this is, and you can see he's pretty happy here, his shoulder is pretty much healed up from the crash. And this was a low side, and the bike wound up in a ditch. And it took us all day to get it back home to my house while he was in a hospital. So as he shows me the mirror, he bought this one. In other words, as we're looking at this, we're trying to make a list of what the parts we still are going to need to do this. And we came up with a corporate decision, and he got a saddlebag piece. Of course, it's not the same color, but we don't care right now because I think the corporate decision here is over the winter we're going to paint the whole bike up into a Tricolari, like a Coppo d'Italia paint job. At least that's what he was thinking today. And well, among other things, we never know what we're going to do. Even after we do it sometime, we don't know. But this looked pretty good. Once we got everything cleaned up, funny stuff started happening. First thing, he looked, the windshield looks salvageable. We can get some of the scratches out of that. So that wasn't a big deal. But then it started getting funnier and funnier by the minute. And every time we took a piece of bodywork off, here we're taking one part off, stuff was falling out of the fairing. Now remember, the bike slid on its side into a stone pile and into a ditch. And what happened was, we had half of Arden Drive in the garage by the time this day was done. Now, no matter where we looked, there were little stones and rocks, and oh my God, it was just funny. As we started taking it apart, it got funnier by the minute, actually. And Glenn was actually laughing and saying his new nickname is going to be the Rock Crusher or the Stone Crusher or whatever. But again, we used our little tubs, keep the bolts separate. Makes it a little bit easier, and of course the photos are good if and when we go to put this together, we can't remember where this screw went or that. Now, the frame, the mount for this piece was bent, but we'll be able to bend it back. That won't be a problem. The light was all crushed and squashed and everything, but the bulb still works. So, of all this repair, I mean, he's happy that he saved money not having to buy a new bulb. You know how expensive those bulbs can be. Wow. Got to be shipped in from Italy, I think. But anyway, now this is just how funny. It started really getting funny here. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to convey how funny this was, but these are stones up here. They're big stones. They were inside the fairing. And we laughed, and I said, hey Glenn, we ought to name this bike the Rock Crusher or the Stone Crusher or the Desmo Rock Crusher or something. Well, then it got funnier by the minute because Glenn was coming up with all these Italian Desmo Rock Crutchero, and oh, I don't know. But anyway, he said, well, we'll wait till Luciano gets here. Luciano had a project to work on today, which is even funnier than this project, the way it turned out. And what happened is, we just kept accumulating these stones. Every time we took a part out, a bucket of rocks fell out. And I'm not sure he took this picture. There were rocks up in the fairing and rocks up under the speedometer, rocks everywhere we went. Now, one of the things we never realized, because we trailered the bike home. Now, Glenn really wanted to drive it, but he didn't realize his shoulder was as hurt as bad as it was. And I talked him into not driving it home, and we went and got Luciano's truck. And it's a good thing we brought the truck, because Glenn might not have made it back. We found a rock or a piece of plastic or carbon fiber or something jammed into the forks where they only turned one way. In other words, you never could turn, it was to the right. You could turn to the left, but not to the right. Well, we kept looking around, and here's this piece of plastic came out. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad as I said it is, but it wouldn't have been great to have a bike that only steered to the left, especially if your shoulder was dislocated. And among other things, maybe you just hit your head and you thought you were in China or something. Who the hell knows? But anyway, so Glenn did the usual. We got rid of all the stones one by one, and we started, and as he took the bottom off, another bucket of stones came out. And we really were starting to get giggly and starting to think of, well, wait till Luciano comes here. He'll come up with a great, we'll ask him how in Italian you say stone crusher or I don't know, landscaping machine or whatever. Inside the thing here, they were all stones. And I don't mean little baby stones. I mean, hey, you can see some of the stones still inside there. Glenn took some of these pictures. Here's some more stones as we look down from the top. The whole bottom of the belly pan was full of stones. So what happened is the scoop of the Ducati, where it looks like a scoop, an ice cream scoop in the front, it just went into the stone pile, and it just became a giant stone scoop. Anyway, but we really did have a fun, maybe a 2-hour session here to get this pulled apart. Because what we need to do is now we need to make a decision, and Glenn and I kind of agreed what he should do is get these parts. He's got parts coming in today or tomorrow from Motorcycle Mall, and just get it bolted back together so we can ride it when he starts feeling up to riding it. And we're not going to start repainting it at this point in the year, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're in the riding season, and look at the little stones in here. Look at you. Think, honest to God, I'm not making this up. This is all solid landscaping material. It's a shame I don't have a stone driveway. I could have added to my wealth. Look at the crap that's in this fairing. You can't. I wouldn't make this up, and you can't make it up. It's just too funny. And it wasn't the only stuff. There was stuff up under the instrument panel where the wires came together. There were stones jammed up in there. Look, he's pointing. There was a stone jammed up in here. Holy moly. I'm sure Vince is getting a kick out of this. Vince, anybody wants to repave their driveway, we can just bring them some stones. And here's leaves and stones inside this part. It was getting funnier by the minute. But we wanted to get this done. Here's more stones that just jumped out. We wanted to get this done because Luciano was coming over with his truck. And I'll tell that story when he gets here. And you couldn't make this up. So the first part of this day was kind of stony. And we took the bike out, took the air compressor, blew off all the dust and grit and everything. And Glenn ran it, of course, and here he is. He's just as happy as, a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs here. But then it all started getting crazy. Luciano shows up. Here he is blowing with the air compressor some more off. Getting the front fender off. And again, there's all dirt and leaves and everything up. All this stuff just fell out of the fender when he turned it over. But when Luciano got here, now the story with Luciano is he was coming over to install a radio that he bought his truck 3 years ago, or maybe more, maybe 4 years ago, but he got an aftermarket radio, a real high-end radio, so that on the way to track days we could listen to I don't know what. We usually don't even play the radio, we just bullshit. But he wanted to have this upgraded radio, so he shows up, and he's got this box full of radios and wires and connectors. And of course, Glenn is, because he's a musician, or was a musician, I don't know, or was a rock crusher, he says, no problem, we'll snap that radio in 15 minutes. Don't even worry about it. So, but first Luciano had a look at the bike, and we all agreed the bike would make a great street fighter. I don't know why Glenn doesn't just make this into, strip it, and naked as can be, and put a Triumph headlight on it or something and turn it into a street fighter. But that, they all agreed it should be a street fighter, but of course it's Glenn's bike, and it's actually Glenn's wallet too, so you always get the deciding vote. And by the way, look up in the garage here. I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm going to have to move the camera. The baby got this ride-on bicycle. I don't know if the ride-on bike is the right word. And now that's permanently resides in my workshop. So we decided we're going to give this radio a shot. But believe me, Luciano knows less than I know. I don't know anything. And Glenn thinks he knows, but he doesn't. So we got the directions out. Start pulling the dashboard of his truck apart. Now, if you've ever installed one of these radios, the instructions are pretty simple. They show you every step except the step you need to know. And I won't even go into this, but we finally, after hours of reading the instruction, making tools, pulling parts that didn't have to come off. Some parts had to come off, some parts didn't have to come off. The wiring looms had to be disconnected. We get the whole thing apart. We start putting the other thing in, and here's Glenn. I mean, he's at the end of his wits here. More parts have to come off, and we get the radio out, and we plug the radio in, the new radio, and everybody's happy. And I said, you know what we ought to do? This would be a great idea. We ought to try. There was an extra plug that wasn't supplied. So what Glenn thought it was the plug that was a problem. Well, it wasn't the plug the problem at all. It was the fact that, well, we really shouldn't say that you have, between my lack of technology and electric things, Luciano's lack of pizza pie, and Glenn having a rough day with screwdrivers here, we get the whole thing installed. We actually get it installed. And I said, you know what would be a great idea now, because I'm an amateur at this stuff, I think it'd be a good idea if we turn the radio on and make sure it works before we put all these dashboard parts in. So Luciano and Glenn, between them, said, Wendy, yeah, that's a great idea. And they fought it around with this radio, turning the knobs, doing everything you could do to make it go on. It wouldn't go on. Absolutely wouldn't go on. And Glenn got frustrated. I got frustrated. Luciano got frustrated. He said, the hell with it. We're going to put the old radio back in. I don't care. And just at this time, Glenn had to see a man about a horse. And so he left me with the job of putting the old radio back in. And I was getting frustrated. I said, what is this bullshit? You buy a expensive radio and the plugs don't fit, and you know, we don't know what the hell we're doing anyway. But look at this mess. Some of these wires had connectors, some didn't, some were for features. And in the radio instructions it says, do not reverse any of these wires or the airbag goes off. Well, that would have been handy, and especially if you're sitting behind the steering wheel. But anyway, and you can't make this up. Everybody's going to have an opinion up to this point of what to do. We couldn't get this radio to turn on. We turned all the knobs and everything. So anyway, I got the old radio put back in. We took this radio out, and I said, in fact, I said to Luciano, wouldn't it be a great idea? You got the play. Let's call him up and ask him what's the story. And he said, nah, I don't have to do that. Glenn said he didn't have to do that. We just put the old radio back. Now, I want to continue the story, but it's too embarrassing to even go there. So what I thought I'd do is I'd take a picture of Karen's garden and before I go back to embarrassing moments in the world of radio installation. So anyway, we all calmed down. I got the other radio put back in. Luciano went home. Glenn had to go to the cardiologist. And I said, call me when you call the company and find out what we did wrong. I know we did something wrong. Well, about an hour went by, and Karen had some company here, and we were in the midst of a lot of adventures going on. It started raining like holy hell. And I get the call from Luciano, and he says, we figured out what we did wrong. Well, it turns out that what we did wrong is the the replacement radio doesn't turn on and off with the knobs. It has a button. And the button is not marked on and off. It's marked something else, probably in Italian or in Greek or something. So the thing that we did wrong is we never pushed the button to turn the radio on. We turned the knobs, and the knob for tuning and the knob for whatever the other knob does, and all these knobs here to turn air conditioners and everything on. But we never turned the radio on, and that's why we thought it didn't work and it wasn't disconnected, and it doesn't need other plugs. But what we're going to do, just to make this a lot of fun, is we're going to schedule a day up at Luciano's. He's ready to change the Ducati belts on his 916. So what we're going to do is make a work day, and in the middle of doing it, we're going to put the radio in correctly. And as the second thing, we're going to definitely make a video of changing the belts in a Ducati 916, which is exactly the same, probably similar to the other ones. But the good news is, at the end of the day, we figured out what we did wrong, and now we're experts not only on taking stones out of the bodywork, we're virtually experts at installing radios in Fords. We know where the on-off switch is. We know you only need one of the big plugs. The second plug doesn't go anywhere. And we have all our little bolts and screws in a very neat pile. We have all these parts ready to reinstall. Of course, some of them have to be replaced. The fairing has to be replaced, and these parts have already come in from Motorcycle Mall, so the next time we actually get to shoot some video, the bike should be, or in 1 or 2 more days, the bike should be ready for a summer of riding once Glenn gets all healed up, and he is Thursday this week going for his surgery, so maybe we'll all be healed up by that August the 30th track day that's coming up. August the 30th, put it on your calendar, drive out to Pocono and watch us do some expert riding. And I mean, you will be surprised how slow we really are. And we'll see you there. I hope you enjoyed this funny video. And if you need a bigger radio in your truck, pay some guy that knows what he's doing to do it.